Welcome to Outside Views, and today we're diving into a topic that's bound to raise some eyebrows. Boris Johnson's latest attempt to stay in the spotlight by selling his new book. And this time, he's throwing everyone from political foes to world leaders and even the great British public under the bus. And it might even be a red bus for all we know, but we'll get to that. Johnson's book, titled Unleashed, is certainly making waves. I talked about this last week already, but the headlines aren't just about the content of the book. It's the sheer number of people Boris seems ready to take down to boost his book sales. Let's start with one of the most surprising revelations, late Queen Elizabeth II. Information shared between the monarch and the Prime Minister is usually kept private, but of course, Johnson never really followed conventions, did he? In his book, he reveals that the late Queen had a form of bone cancer before her death in 2022, which was officially attributed to old age. He's the first prominent politician to make this revelation, and it's left many questioning his decision to share such sensitive information. But the monarchy isn't the only British institution Johnson is ready to expose. He also recounts his mainly pep talk with Prince Harry, trying to persuade him to stay in the UK rather than move to America with Meghan Markle. And Johnson himself admits that the whole thing was ridiculous and totally hopeless, which is a rare moment of self-awareness from the former PM. Then there's Theresa May. Boris couldn't resist taking a jab at his predecessor, calling Downing Street a crack den when he first moved in. May's former chief of staff, Gavin Barwell, was quick to respond, saying this is just another example of Johnson's casual relationship with the truth. But Boris didn't stop at her home decor. He also attacked May's personality, calling her school marmy and revealing his odd fixation on her nose-twisting facial expressions. Just the kind of insights we all needed, right? And it doesn't stop with the UK. Johnson takes aim at world leaders too, and no one is safe. He suggests that Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, might have bugged his personal bathroom while he was serving as Foreign Secretary. Yeah, you heard that right. Apparently, a listening device was found in what Johnson charmingly refers to as his thunderbox, his personal toilet. And that's quite the claim, even by Boris's standards. But he didn't just target Netanyahu. He goes after French President Emmanuel Macron, accusing him of being a positive nuisance who tried to meddle in Brexit Britain's affairs. And according to Johnson, Macron turned a blind eye to migrant crossings in the English Channel as a way to punish Britain over Brexit. And speaking of Brexit, Boris doesn't hold back when it comes to the EU. He claims that at one point he seriously considered invading the Netherlands to seize AstraZeneca vaccines during the pandemic. Yeah, you heard that right. Invading the Netherlands. And Johnson admits the plan was nuts, but that didn't stop him from considering it. In his book, he paints the EU as acting with malice and spite toward Britain, continuing his long-standing grievances with the bloc. And then there's his old sparring partner, Barack Obama. Johnson's feud with Obama began during the Brexit campaign, when he accused the then president of having an ancestral dislike of the British Empire. In Unleashed, Boris accuses Obama of pouring scorn on the idea of a UK-US free trade deal before the Brexit vote, once again stirring the pot between the two. And if that wasn't enough, he takes a shot at Joe Biden as well. Johnson gleefully recounts how he gave Biden a cheap picture printed from Wikipedia at the G7 summit, contrasting it with the lavish gifts he received from the Americans. He reflects that it was fabulously mean and in true Boris fashion, and he suggests that British taxpayers would have approved. But what about the British public? Freed from the constraints of seeking re-election, Johnson doesn't hold back. He wonders why voters so avidly crave the COVID-19 lockdowns and accuses them of enjoying having their freedoms curtailed. While he later insisted he wasn't mocking the public, the tone of his comments left many feeling uncomfortable, especially given that over 100,000 Brits died during the pandemic on his government's watch. And then there's his own government. In what feels like classic Johnson, he slams the very COVID-19 lockdowns that he himself signed off on. He writes that he could hardly believe the audacity of the government in trying to micromanage people's lives, as if he wasn't the one in charge at the time. It's this sort of deflection that Johnson has become known for, always finding someone else to blame. And even his own party doesn't escape criticism. Boris takes aim at Tory MPs, accusing them of being swayed by social media hate storms and believing that replacing him would somehow guarantee victory. He calls their decision to oust him worse than a crime. And of course, no Johnson book would be complete without a dig at Rishi Sunak. He takes shots at his former chancellor, questioning whether Sunak had the ability to handle the job and expressing disappointment that Sunak didn't support him longer. It's clear that Johnson still harbors some bitterness over his downfall. But it's not just Sunak who gets roasted. David Cameron, Boris's old schoolmate and rival, comes in for a pasting too. Johnson recalls how Cameron flounced off the stage after losing the EU referendum, leaving Boris to clean up the mess. And the schoolboy rivalry from their days at Eton is still very much alive. And let's not forget Michael Gove. Johnson expresses bewilderment at why Gove did him in by running for Conservative leader in 2016 after they initially launched a joint campaign. And he calls Gove's decision to betray him stupidity, clearly still sore about the fallout. And even former Chancellor Philip Hammond isn't spared, as Johnson dismisses him as dry as dust, though he admits Hammond urged him to take over after May's failed snap election. But Boris didn't limit his jabs to politicians. He also takes aim at high-profile figures from other walks of life, like civil servant Sue Gray, who investigated the lockdown-busting parties in Downing Street. He brands her report a ridiculous and unfair witch hunt, echoing his familiar strategy of attacking those who hold him accountable. And how about his neighbours? After leaving London, Johnson moved to the Oxfordshire countryside, but it seems he's not too happy with the local scenery. He complains about European flags flying over nearby homes, likening it to the fall of the Roman Empire. And as if flags were some grand political statement rather than just, flags. And in the worlds of celebrities, Johnson doesn't hold back either. He laments that Emma Watson turned down an invitation to a United Nations event on female education, and he recounts how Leonardo DiCaprio brushed him off at the COP26 climate summit. Apparently, even the stars don't have time for Boris. So, what are we left with? Unleashed is classic Boris Johnson, colourful, bombastic, and full of attacks on anyone and everyone. He spares no one, from royalty to world leaders to his own countrymen. It's a book that seems designed to reignite old feuds and settle scores, all while selling copies by the bucket load. But in doing so, it also reveals a lot about the man himself. Johnson seems to revel in controversy, always ready with a sharp quip or a biting remark, but behind the humor, there's an undeniable bitterness. It's clear that he's still wrestling with the fallout from his time in office, and perhaps trying to rewrite the narrative in his favor. So what do you think? Is it just Boris being Boris, or is there more to his attacks? Has he gone too far in throwing so many people under the bus to sell his book? Or is this just politics as usual for him? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching Outside Views. Stay informed, stay engaged, and don't forget to question the narratives being sold to you, whether they come from politicians, world leaders, or even former prime ministers trying to sell a book. Until next time, and the next video is right here in the end screen.